We already know that North Korea is an extremely dangerous country, with many prohibitions that foreigners, like us, find so irrational that it makes you want to hit your head against a wall. Now, let's dive into some of the extremely restrictive regulations in this country. The death of an American student in North Korea. Looking back at a previous story shows just how dangerous North Korea is. American student Otto Warmbier tragically died after being released by North Korea. He was sentenced to hard labor for crimes against the state and was released in a comatose state, requiring brain surgery. Warmbier, a University of Virginia student, was arrested in early 2016 while visiting North Korea as part of a tour. He was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor in March of the previous year, after confessing to trying to steal a propaganda banner from the Pyongyang hotel. When released, Warmbier exhibited signs of seizures, muscle weakness, and scarring on his body consistent with medical care. Doctors found no evidence of wounds or broken bones, nor was there any sign of botulism poisoning, as North Korea had claimed, because it doesn't remain in the body for long. Despite searching for chronic nerve damage, doctors found no evidence of that either. When he returned to the U.S., Warmbier's eyes remained open, and he blinked automatically, but there were no signs of speech or response to verbal commands. North Korea claimed that the 22-year-old had fallen into a coma after contracting botulism and taking a sleeping pill following his trial. Ban on travel for citizens. North Korea is infamous for its strict prohibition on citizens leaving the country. Specifically, North Koreans are not allowed to travel abroad. It seems the government doesn't want its citizens to be aware of the modern world. Once people see the outside world, they may no longer want to return home. On the other hand, foreigners also have difficulty entering North Korea, especially independent travelers. To visit North Korea, one must register through a strict process under the watchful eye of the government. Even if you manage to get in, tourists are not allowed to speak freely with the locals, and this hardly ever happens. Taking photos is also restricted, especially of the military, monuments, and leaders. When you arrive, GPS devices and cameras with zoom lenses are confiscated, and before leaving, police will inspect the photos on your phone. Any inappropriate photos must be deleted before you're allowed to leave the country. North Korea keeps its internal information strictly confidential. Strict rules in Pyongyang. Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, is tightly controlled. North Korean citizens cannot freely move to the capital unless they meet specific conditions and receive permission from the government. Only those with a good background and loyalty to the regime are allowed to live there. For tourists, staying in Pyongyang after dark is restricted, except in special cases. Travel from one district to another is also controlled, and citizens' movements are heavily regulated by the government. These strict measures help the government control internal movement, ensuring stability and order in Pyongyang and across the country. Clothing and hairstyle regulations. North Koreans are not allowed to wear blue jeans or have unusual hairstyles. Jeans are considered a symbol of imperialism. Citizens are only permitted to wear black jeans, and other clothing options are mostly limited to traditional attire. Modern, tight-fitting clothing, like that worn by office workers in Vietnam, could be considered illegal. While in other countries, hairstyles play a key role in enhancing one's appearance. In North Korea, hairstyles are simply for protecting the head from the sun. The government has clearly defined that men have 15 hairstyle options, and women have 18. You can choose any style as long as it's one of the approved options. Overall, these styles seem to be about 50 years behind global trends. Ban on Western culture. North Korea completely bans access to Western culture. Cultural products like music, movies, or books from Western countries, or even from South Korea, are strictly forbidden. Anyone caught using or consuming these cultural products is considered a criminal and can face severe punishment. Instead, citizens can only watch government-approved television programs and read state-controlled newspapers, which mainly praise the leaders and the nation, aiming to maintain loyalty to the government. Blocking Western cultural influence is part of North Korea's strategy to maintain absolute control over the citizens' spiritual lives. Ban on criticizing the government. Criticizing the government or the leader is completely forbidden in North Korea. Freedom of speech is virtually non-existent, and citizens are only allowed to praise and revere the leaders. If anyone dares to speak ill of or oppose the government, they are considered a serious criminal and can face severe punishment, including forced labor. This strict control helps ensure absolute loyalty from the people. The media and all sources of information are controlled by the government, allowing them to maintain tight control and prevent any public opposition. Difficult living conditions. North Koreans live in harsh conditions, not being allowed to use hot water at home. Electricity usage is also limited, and citizens often have to burn wood for heating in the winter. Utilities like lights and heaters are not widely available, and women have to use cloth towels in place of modern sanitary products. Many North Koreans, without access to heating or modern appliances, struggle to cope with the harsh winter weather. These harsh living conditions reflect the country's difficult economic situation, where most resources are allocated to the military rather than improving the lives of its people. Internet access restrictions. North Koreans are not allowed to use the internet. Technically, it's not a complete ban, but they don't have the right to access it. In 2009, North Korea connected to the global internet, exciting both the world and its citizens. However, only the government has access to the internet, while the general public remains disconnected. Some computers in national libraries allow limited access, but only to state-controlled websites. Smartphones are also prohibited, and phones with 3G Wi-Fi are strictly off-limits. Essentially, North Korea has no Facebook or Google. The citizens have no idea what Forex is and are not involved in activities like Bitcoin. North Korea appears to be isolating itself from the world, while the people are closely connected and there's no culture of sitting at a cafe with everyone glued to their phones. Desire to escape to South Korea. South Korea remains the top destination for North Korean defectors, as it has policies welcoming them, viewing them as fellow citizens. For those looking to leave North Korea, another option is to head to Japan. The sea between North Korea and Japan, or the East Sea as it's called by both Koreas, spans over 1 million square kilometers, with an average depth of 1.7 meters and reaches up to 3.7 meters at its deepest. Crossing this body of water is a dangerous journey due to frequent storms and tsunamis. During winter, the sea temperature ranges from -20 degrees Celsius in the north to 5 degrees Celsius in the south. Due to the extreme difficulty of this journey, very few people have succeeded over the years. In 2016, a young man, who was wanted by the authorities for watching South Korean films, decided to emulate Columbus by hopping into a wooden boat and sailing across the sea. Near Japan, he jumped into the water, clinging to a plastic container, and eventually washed ashore, where the police found him wandering the streets like a lost deer. Since Japan has no formal diplomatic relations with North Korea, defectors are typically handed over to South Korea by Tokyo. Methods of escaping North Korea. The world may be in the era of the Internet and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, with light reaching almost every corner of the Earth, except for one dark spot, North Korea, the most mysterious country in the world, as seen from a satellite image taken by the International Space Station, ISS. While humanity has landed on the Moon and is exploring Mars, escaping North Korea remains far more challenging and dangerous than any of these endeavors. Why is that? Let's explore some of the ways North Koreans have actually managed to flee the country and learn about their real-life experiences. First, setting aside the horror stories and Western media portrayals, such as people starving in North Korea, the truth is that there are North Koreans who have illegally crossed borders for economic, political reasons, or family reunification. Over the decades, it's estimated that more than 30,000 North Koreans have defected to the South. though the number drastically dropped to only 229 in 2020, after North Korea closed its borders with China due to the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the most famous defectors is Parkhorn, who made headlines at the 2014 Ireland Young Leaders Summit. He shared 7 methods North Koreans have used to escape. The first method is crossing the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, between the two Koreas. In 2019, former U.S. President Donald Trump made history by stepping across the dividing line between the two Koreas. In the video, he did so with ease. But for ordinary people, even getting close to the line is unthinkable, let alone crossing it. The 1953 Armistice Agreement turned this area into one of the most heavily guarded places in the world, stretching 248 kilometers long and about 4 kilometers wide along the 38th parallel, splitting the Korean peninsula. It's filled with over 1 million landmines, razor-sharp barbed wire, electric fences, and surveillance cameras. Both sides also station hundreds of thousands of troops along the border. If North Korean troops detect any movement in the DMZ, they will shoot immediately under the agreement's provisions. So, at the DMZ, both sides resort to psychological warfare by blasting loudspeakers to demoralize and encourage defections from the other side. However, it is extremely rare for North Korean soldiers to defect across the DMZ, as those assigned to guard the border are typically very loyal to Pyongyang. One famous exception occurred on November 13, 2017, when a North Korean soldier made a daring escape by driving through the border in a style reminiscent of the Fast and Furious films. He was pursued by 4 comrades and shot at least 40 times, with 5 bullets hitting him. After his vehicle got stuck, he ran on foot across the border, and South Korean soldiers found him 50 meters inside their territory, severely wounded. The most amusing part is that after recovering, he insisted on listening to K-pop to believe he had truly arrived in South Korea. The second method defectors use is swimming to South Korea. Since North Korea is a peninsula with China and Russia to the north and seas on both sides, this method seems ideal for adventurous escapees. However, most North Koreans cannot afford boats and are not allowed to own one. And even if they somehow acquire a boat, they aren't permitted to cross the maritime borders. In 2021, a young man proved to be a real-life Aquaman as he wore a diving suit, used fins, and swam for 6 hours across the border to reach the east coast of South Korea. Before making the swim, he ditched all his equipment and crawled through a drainage ditch beneath a barbed wire fence running along the shore. He must have had some extraordinary luck, because for over 3 hours, CCTV cameras captured him 8 times, alarms sounded twice, but border guards didn't notice. He was only caught when he was found sleeping, with a face mask dangling from a tree. The third method is escaping to Russia, which shares a 17-kilometer border with North Korea. These areas are mountainous and treacherous, with soldiers from both countries guarding them very carefully. The biggest hurdle is that Russia generally does not welcome North Korean defectors. In theory, Moscow could grant asylum, but the process is extremely strict, and deportation rates are high. Therefore, if someone manages to cross the mountains and avoid being caught by border guards, the best option is to seek asylum at the South Korean consulate. In short, escaping to Russia is not a very feasible option.